Hi everybody, today I'm talking about 6 harmful side effects of fluoride. So fluoride is praised as something that strengthens your teeth and decreases cavities, and it has been for a while. And then it's added to a lot of our water supply as well. However, when you start looking into the research, this just doesn't add up and there are a lot of harmful side effects. So I want to talk first about what is fluoride before we get into the side effects. So fluoride, at least what's added to our water, is a toxic byproduct of the phosphofertilization industry. So this industry where they make these fertilizers, there is a byproduct of fluoride. Fluoride can occur in different forms, and the form that we typically see here are silicofluorides. So that is the molecule fluorine bound to silicone, and sometimes there's sodium in there, and it makes silicofluorides. So these are 85 times more toxic than another common form of fluoride that you see in nature more often, which is calcium fluoride. And basically, when these phosphofertilization companies have this byproduct, normally they would have to pay to dispose of it. So it's about $1.40 per gallon to dispose of it. Sometimes it costs more if there's more contaminants in there, and it has to be neutralized and then disposed of. They can't just take this to a landfill. And instead of doing this, a lot of them will sell it to the government without even neutralizing it first, and that gets added to our water. So it just raises some questions that there is something that's considered too toxic to dump into our land, but it can be sold to the government and added straight to our water. So fluoride comes from the molecule fluorine, which is a halogen. If you remember, like the periodic table in school, how there was that group that were like the noble gases, and they were the 7th column. They weren't the last one, and they were missing an electron. So since they're missing an electron, they're considered unstable. They want to have all their electrons. So you don't typically see fluorine just in nature. It's like a pale yellow corrosive gas. Instead, you'll see it bound to another molecule. So fluorine can be bound to calcium, you get calcium fluoride, or bound to silicone and you get silicofluorides. So yeah, like I was saying, the silicofluorides are more toxic. Something you'll come into contact with is a lot of people that are pro-fluoride will be like, oh, nature thought of this first by adding fluoride to water. And they're talking about is sometimes calcium fluoride can be found in water in nature. However, it doesn't dissipate into the water, and it's not as easily absorbed, so you get rid of a lot of it. It's just about 2% of it gets absorbed by animals when they drink it. So this is another reason that the silicofluorides are considered 85 times more toxic, because it absorbs into the water and then into your body a lot easier. However, those calcium fluoride molecules are not without their own harms. So animals that drink the water that has calcium fluoride in it still develop molted teeth and this other issue we're going to talk about, which is dental fluorosis. You might have seen white spots on people's teeth before. That's what that is, but we'll get into it more. A few more notes about fluoride that just kind of emphasize its toxicity are it's an accumulative toxin, so that means it accumulates in the body. Also, the FDA classifies fluoride as a prescription drug, which is kind of weird. The National Research Council of the National Academics classifies fluoride as a hormone or endocrine disruptor and says that it can interfere with functions in our brain. And the U.S. Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry lists fluoride among the top 20 out of 275 substances that pose the most significant threat to human health. And then the Australia's National Pollutant Inventory says that fluoride compounds were ranked 27th out of 208 ranks for pollutants. So now that you know a little bit more about what fluoride is and some of the toxicity implications, let's get into the exact consequences of fluoride. So the first health consequence is that it decreases intelligence. So fluoride is a known neurotoxin, which means it's toxic to your nervous system and kind of how your body communicates. It has been shown to cross the blood-brain barrier, so that's designed to keep a lot of things out of your brain, a lot of unwanted things, but fluoride can actually get inside. It can decrease mental function, and there's a lot of evidence it decreases your IQ as well, so like how smart people are. There is a lot of evidence for it being a neurotoxin. There is 130 human brain studies, 241 animal brain studies, and 33 cellular brain studies, and 30 review studies that all find it to be a neurotoxin. As far as IQ goes, in 2019, there were 60 studies on IQ and fluoride, and 53 of them showed a lower IQ in children in communities with high fluoride exposure compared to communities with lower fluoride exposure, and the average decrease was 7 IQ points. It should be noted that a shift downward of 5 IQ points in a large population would halve the number of very bright children, which is IQ greater than 130, and increase by over 50% the number of mentally handicapped, IQ lower than 70. Such a downward shift would have both huge economical and social consequences for a country like the US. A decrease in IQ in children has also been correlated with an increase in fluoride consumption of their mothers. So there's 2 different studies that go into this. One is in Mexico, one is in Canada. So for the Canadian study, an increase of 1 milligram of fluoride was associated with a decrease of almost 4 IQ points, where the overall association was driven by boys. The Mexico study looked at 299 mothers and their children and also found a correlation with decreased IQ in the children of mothers that had more fluoride consumption. Fluoride has also been linked with ADHD. It's also been shown in rats to go into their brain and cause trouble there. I'm trying to keep this a little simpler, so if you want the long version of everything, I do have an article linked down below where I have all the sources and studies that I looked at for this, and I'll share a little bit more there. But basically, fluoride is a neurotoxin. It is not good for your brain, and it decreases your mental function. It interferes with your brain, and it even decreases intelligence. The second harmful effect is that fluoride can calcify your pineal gland. So fluoride has been found to start to accumulate in your pineal gland, which is a little gland in your brain that's responsible for things like producing melatonin. It's responsible for initiating puberty in females. It's important for maintaining your circadian rhythm and protecting your body from cell damage caused by free radicals. So once it becomes calcified, which is a buildup of these like phosphate crystals in it, it struggles to maintain its function. So you could have trouble sleeping, you could have an early onset of puberty for women, you could get breast cancer is another thing that happens here, increased oxidative stress, and then Alzheimer's disease can be higher here too. Even the first experiments to see if fluoride was safe or not found that young women that were in communities that had fluoride in the water reached puberty at average about 5 months earlier than young women that lived in neighboring places that did not fluoridate their water. So that's very interesting. Also, a lot of cultures will refer to the pineal gland as like the third eye, and it will be more of a connection to divine spiritual things. So blocking of the pineal gland is also associated with kind of being cut off from that more spiritual side of things. And now, due to the mass fluoridization of water, it's said that most people over 18 have a calcified pineal gland. The third harm is it can actually increase cavities. So, now this is a big claim. Fluoride is supposed to help you decrease cavities, but there's a lot of fishy business in a lot of these studies. So I have a lot of quotes from studies here just to really drive this home for you. But the first one I'll go over is the largest study of tooth decay in America by the National Institute of Dental Research in 1987 proved that there was no significant difference in decay rates of 39,000 fluoridated partially fluoridated and non-fluoridated children, ages 5 to 17, and it was surveyed in 84 cities. The media has never disclosed these facts, even though it cost the taxpayers $3,670,000. So that's pretty crazy. Fluoride doesn't prevent tooth decay. It delays it by provoking a genetic malfunction that causes teeth to erupt later than normal. Therefore, in many of the studies that are supposed to prove fluoride works really well, the statistics are skewed because children haven't even had their teeth erupt yet to be able to even get cavities. So it delays new teeth from coming in. So when they're looking at like how many cavities kids age 5 have that had fluoride or didn't have fluoride, the ones that had fluoride had like less teeth to even have the potential to have cavities on. So that's how a lot of the studies get skewed that way. So one study shows this well. So they claim that fluorinated Newburgh children ages 6 had 100% less tooth decay from fluoride use. By age 7, 100% less. By age 8, 67% less. By age 9, 50% less. Age 10, 40% less. So it's slowly decreasing how much as they get older. So obviously the only reduction that really counted was the 40% by age 10. But the Public Health Service totaled the 5 reductions shown, then divided by 5 to obtain what they called an overall reduction of 70%. So they said that fluoride in the water reduced the rate of cavities by 70% because they found this average, but like we just talked about, fluoride prevents teeth from erupting as soon, so the younger kids didn't even have as many teeth to be counted in this, so it clearly skewed it. And then on top of that, had the health department continued their survey beyond age 10, they would have found that the percentage of reduction in cavities from fluoride continued downhill to 30, 20, and 0. And eventually the children drinking fluorinated water had more cavities, not less. So what happens is just the teeth erupt later. So in these studies, it looks like they're getting less cavities, but as the children get older and older, it starts to even out. And then what this study was finding was that later in life, when they actually looked at past childhood, the kids that had fluorinated water and are growing up are now getting more cavities, not less. Another interesting case is from children from the African country of Uganda. So there, they just tend to have less tooth decay than we do in America. And the main two thoughts for this are, one, they're not having as much fluoride, toothpaste fluoride treatments, things like that. And then the other one is just diet, not eating as much sugar and junk food and things like that. But a little more specific, they actually looked there in Uganda at the higher fluoridated water communities and the lower fluorinated water communities. And in this study, no teeth were lost due to cavities in the lower fluoride district, but 6 out of the 135 looked at were lost to cavities in the higher fluoride district. Since these children were in the same kind of communities, eating the same kind of diets, they concluded that it was the fluorinated water that made the biggest difference here in increasing cavity rates for the children that had more water. There's more evidence to support this theory. So, for example, when looking at different African populations, we see the same results. Children drinking 3 milligrams per liter of a water to fluoride ratio have more cavities than children that drink a 0.19 and 0.48 milligram to liter fluoride to water ratio. In contrast, only 65% of fluoride saturated American 10-year-olds are cavity-free, and a mere 35% of 14-year-olds are cavity-free. Another example can be seen in Europe. Ireland, 73% fluoridated since the 1960s, has a higher tooth decay rate than 5 other European countries that don't fluorinate their water. And another example can be seen in the world's largest study on dental caries, which looked at 400,000 students and revealed that decay increased 27% with a 1 ppm fluoride increase in drinking water. In Japan, fluoridation caused decay increases of 7% in 22,000 students, while in the U.S., a decrease of 43% occurred in 29,000 students when 1 part per million fluoride was added to the drinking water. So I know that's a lot of studies and stuff like that, but it's a bold claim to say that fluoride actually is either neutral or worse than no fluoride for your teeth. So I wanted to give you some stuff to back that up. Again, the article with all the links to the studies and everything is in the description if you want. This is a little bit different of a video than my normal ones, but I wanted to give you more evidence, and I did dive pretty deep in this one. Okay, so the fourth problem is an increased rate of dental fluorosis. I talked about this a little bit earlier, but to reiterate, dental fluorosis it's also called molted teeth. It occurs when fluoride causes calcification of the enamel, which gives that white chalky appearance, and it can actually gradually turn brown with time. Many will say, like, oh, it's just a cosmetic defect, but Dr. Weston A. Price, who you know I love, he further explained that excess fluoride in the water, even a small fraction of this concentration when present in drinking water, greatly disrupts normal tooth and bone development, producing the unsightly disfigurement of brown stains and molted enamel. Dr. Price also stated that fluoride may ruin teeth of grazing animals by making them so brittle that they can break off. It has long been known that fluoride is detrimental to dental health. In 1944, the Journal of American Dental Association reported with 1.6 to 4 parts per million fluoride in water, 50% or more past the age of 24 have false teeth because of fluoride damage to their own teeth. The origins of fluorinization in water came about from a dentist called H. Trendley Dean. In 1939, Dean examined the water from 345 communities in Texas. He found that a high concentration of fluoride in water correlated with high incidences of dental fluorosis, and he found that communities having 1 part per million fluoride in water supply had less incidences of this dental fluorosis. By less, he still meant 10% of the people. Based on that, Dean decided that 1 part per million fluoride in the water supply must be the perfect amount, and many cities began adding that 1 part per million fluoride to their water supply. However, Dean's report had left out some key facts. For instance, his report used data from 21 cities that supported his claim, while leaving out the other 272 other cities that didn't show the same correlation he was basing this whole thing off of. Later in court cases, Dean was forced to admit under oath that his data was invalid. In 1957, he had to admit at AMA hearings that even waters contaminated with mere 0.1 parts per million could cause dental fluorosis, the first visible sign of fluoride overdose. Moreover, there is no one single double-blind study to indicate that fluorinization is effective in reducing cavities. Unfortunately, this info has not reached much of the public, and the lie that fluoride is good for you and your dental health has only snowballed. Meanwhile, currently up to 80% of U.S. children suffer from some degree of dental fluorosis, while in Canada the figure is up to 71%. A prevalence of 80.9% was reported in children 12 to 14 years old in Augusta, Georgia, the highest prevalence yet reported in an optimally fluoridated community in the United States. Moderate to severe fluorosis was found in 14% of the children. Okay, the fifth health consequence is it increases what's called skeletal fluorosis. So this is going to be kind of similar but very gnarly. It's also caused by fluoride calcification, except this time it happens in your bones instead of your teeth. It's a very serious bone disorder resembling osteoporosis and characterized by extreme density and hardness and abnormally fragile bones. So skeletal fluorosis can cause joint pain and stiffness, bony outgrowths, bony fractures, and dyspnea. Difficulty in breathing because of how hard the bones are there. In more advanced cases of fluoride exposure, bones become held together by masses of new bone laid down in the joint socket, ligament, and tendons. This results in the locking up of joints and permanently inability of the victims to move or flex their joints. Vertebrae become fused at many places. This results in the characteristic hunchback syndrome of skeletal fluorosis. It's also been shown to interfere with proper collagen formation. And then research by Dr. Jolie and her team shows that as little as 0.07 parts per million fluoride in drinking water led to bone deformities and skeletal fluorosis in India, with the occurrence and severity increasing as the amount of fluoride in the water increased. In the U.S., Dr. George Walbot also diagnosed some of the early symptoms of skeletal fluorosis, including arthritis and joint pains, as being due to the consumption of water fluorinated at 1 part per million. More incidences of fluoride, this time airborne, causing arthritic symptoms, can be found in Switzerland, Germany, Britain, US, Canada, and North Africa. In one incident, they had found a brick manufacturing area about 50 miles outside of London, where they reported over 90% of the population was suffering from arthritis influenced by airborne fluoride. So then the sixth health consequence is broadly other health consequences, and it's just a long list of other things that have been associated with fluoride and linked with fluoride consumption. So I honestly just have a long list of other things, and again, there are studies that back this up in that article that I have linked down below. But so here's some other things that have been linked with fluoride. So hypothyroidism, death, cancer, genetic damage, damage to the blood, bone, brain, heart, kidneys, liver, lungs, thyroid, and reproductive system, hardening of the arteries, black tarry stools, vomit, sometimes bloody, stomach cramps or pains, tremors, constipation, loss of appetite, skin rashes, sores in the mouth and on the lips, weight loss, accelerated aging, immune system dysfunction, and gut inflammation. So you can see how this ties back into gut health and healing, which is what I'm normally talking about on here. Fluoride is a toxin. It is not something that helps your teeth. If anything, it hurts your teeth. It does not make them better. It's accumulating in your pineal gland, messing up your sleep. It is possibly accumulating in your bones, making them weaker and stiffer, and in severe cases can lead to the skeletal fluorosis. It's messing with your teeth, creating those white spots that again in severe cases could start turning brown. This is not a good thing. It's linked to a lot of gut damage. Like other toxins, it starts throwing off your microbiome and leads to a lot of other issues as well. So just wanted to make this one to really drive home that fluoride is not good for you. Thanks for bearing with the more having to read from some notes on this one and all of the study quotes that can be a little bit more of a mouthful. But again, I just wanted to really show a little bit more evidence in this video. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful. Oh, I do want to talk about what you can do. So the biggest thing you can do to minimize fluoride is just to get a water filter that filters out fluoride. You can also check your local water to see if they put fluoride in it or not. So if you go to the EWG website, that's the Environmental Working Group, it's ewg.org, you can put in your zip code and then select your water supply, and it'll give you a water quality report. They update it every few years, and you can see what's in your water. So it's a little harder for me because I'm on a well, so I don't assume it's obviously not added, but it can also be like a contaminant from runoff from agriculture, stuff like that. And where I previously lived, I was on city water that did have fluoride. So I have fluoride filters still from that, and I've still been using them. But I like a Berkey water filter, and then I get the separate fluoride filters. You do have to replace them every year, so you have to be mindful of that. The black carbon filters can go a lot longer. There are other water filters you can get. Just make sure if you have fluoride in your water supply, you're filtering it out. That's really, really important. And it's going to be the biggest one to focus on because it's pretty easy to get toothpaste that don't have fluoride in it. I have a recipe I will link down below for the toothpaste that I make. I make it from scratch so that I have good ingredients in it. I've been doing it for a long time. It's worked very, very well. And yeah, you don't want to use any mouthwashes, no fluoride treatments at the dentist office. Those are really the biggest ways that you get fluoride in and to be aware of. So yeah, hopefully this has convinced you to not use fluoride anymore and that you'll see a lot of health benefits from it. There was a lot of different things I mentioned in there. Even your sleep quality can be influenced quite a bit. So this is something that I did later in my healing journey. So I had already made so much healing progress before I got the fluoride filter. Other than that, I wasn't using any fluoride. But yeah, so hard to say a huge difference for myself because I had already made so much healing progress. But all of these little things add up and make a big difference, and it's something I think is really important to do. So anyway, I hope you liked this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.